to one or two mist and fog patches, and also turning fairly chilly as well in some rural spots. But in towns and cities, temperatures holding up 10 to 13 degrees as your overnight lows. So under those clear skies, we got off to a pretty fine start for much of the country first thing on Wednesday morning. A lot of sunshine, particularly across England, Wales, Northern Ireland. More cloud, though, continuing to affect parts of Scotland, with again one or two showers. And actually for much of the day, most places will be dry, like I said. Still the risk of an isolated shower across England and Wales. Still further showers affecting parts of Scotland, North East England. But most places will be dry, fine and warm as well. 26 degrees there for London. Low 20s for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Quick look ahead into Thursday then. Again, that largely dry theme looks set to continue with clear skies for many areas. Some sunshine, particularly towards the west and the northwest. A bit more cloud towards the east coast, but again, in that sunshine, feeling warm. Warmer still as we head into Friday, but with that an increasing risk of showers and thunderstorms.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Now, coming up tonight, a GB News exclusive. Illegal working is on the up in certain sectors. But do you think it's realistic to ever stop this entirely, or is the black economy just a fact of life? And the NHS getting more money pumped into it. But if you ask me, that is not going to cut the mustard when it comes to fixing the mess that is the NHS. So something for you to ponder tonight. Is privatisation inevitable or not? Would it be a bad thing? Certainly we are told that it would. Is that realistic or not? And Brexit, I don't know what's going on in this world, but apparently half of us now want there to be another referendum within the next decade. Goodness me, would that be a good idea or not? And in today's episode of This World Has Gone Mad, the latest teenage trend, you won't even believe it, is taking as many paracetamols as you can to see who can get hospitalised for the longest. Are these kids thick or what? A police chief now is asking parents to get a grip of their kids, but I fear that that ship has sailed. Am I wrong or not? We've got it all to come and more, but before we get into it, let's get tonight's latest headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Michelle, thank you. Good evening. The top story from the GB newsroom tonight is that Norfolk and Suffolk police have admitted that the personal information of over 1,000 people, including victims of crime and witnesses, was mistakenly released in response to a Freedom of Information request. Both forces have attributed the mistake to a technical issue. In a joint statement, the forces said the data was hidden from anyone opening the files, which were issued between April 21 and March 22. The Prime Minister has said that with wages rising at their fastest level for 22 years, there is now light at the end of the tunnel. Figures from the Office for National Statistics show wages rose by 7.8% in the last quarter, with inflation standing at 7.9%. The Prime Minister says bringing inflation down is still his government's key aim.
It's inflation that's making people feel poorer. It's eating into the savings in their bank account, making sure there's less money that they have at the end of the month. And that's why we need to bring it down. And that's how we'll also bring down interest rates and ease the pressure on people's mortgages. Now, we are making progress. I'm not complacent, and we'll have more numbers this week, which hopefully show continued downward movement on inflation. But we've got to stick to the plan. That means taking the right, responsible decisions for the economy, being responsible with borrowing, with public sector pay. And if we do that, we will bring inflation down.
Any rise in rail fares in England next year will be below the rate of inflation. The Department for Transport says the increase will not be as high as the rise in the retail price index, which normally dictates rail fares. The government's vowed to continue to protect rail passengers with the soaring cost of living. Any rises will be delayed now until March next year, rather than being brought in January. The Home Office has exclusively revealed to GB News there's been a huge increase in undocumented migrants exploiting rules to work in the food delivery sector. It says restaurants and small businesses offering delivery services are being urged to carry out more detailed checks on their drivers to crack down on scams. Home Office officials say working in the shadow economy, as it's known, is a major pull factor for those embarking on often dangerous, illegal journeys to the UK. Police are appealing for information after 2 men were stabbed in what's believed to have been a homophobic attack in London. Detectives would like to speak to this man. If you're watching television, you can see this CCTV still of a man that was seen outside the Two Brewers pub in Clapham just after 10 o'clock on Sunday. Police have urged anyone with any information to contact them or call 101 or Crime Stoppers. And police are appealing for footage after a man was stabbed outside the British Museum in London. A man who was taken to hospital with stab wounds has since been discharged. A 37-year-old male was arrested in connection with the incident and later charged, but police say they believe a number of people may have video of the incident or the aftermath of what happened, which may help with their investigation. The Metropolitan Police say 3 people are facing trial for allegedly breaching the Official Secrets Act. 5 people were arrested in February as part of an investigation by the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command. 3 of the 5, who are believed to be Bulgarian, were later charged with possession of false identity documents, and they appeared in court last month. All 5 have been released on bail until September. In the United States, Donald Trump says he'll release a detailed report next Monday on what he's calling election fraud, referring to the 2020 US election. The former president has been landed with a 4th indictment, this time from the state of Georgia, accusing him of trying to overturn his election loss to Joe Biden. He's called the 4th set of charges a witch hunt. The 13 charges include falsely declaring election fraud had happened, urging state officials to violate their oaths by altering election results. Donald Trump is still the front runner as the Republican nominee for next year's presidential election, and he denies any wrongdoing. Back here in the UK, NH hospitals in England will get a £250 million boost from the government to increase capacity as part of the Urgent Emergency Care Recovery Plan. The money will create 900 beds to relieve pressures and help cut waiting lists. 30 NHS trusts will benefit from the investment. The majority of schemes will be completed by January to help deal with winter pressures. And finally, today marks 2 years since the Taliban took control of Afghanistan following the withdrawal of Western allies. People demonstrated outside Parliament earlier on today in solidarity with Afghans who oppose Taliban rule. Aid organisations have also urged government ministers not to abandon the Afghan people. You're with GB News across the UK on your TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Back now to Michelle Dewberry.
Thanks for that, Polly. I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me, my panel, Scarlett Maguire, a former Labour advisor, and Housewives' favourite Ben Habib, also known as the CEO of First Property Group and a member of the Reform UK party. Oh, you get a little blush, don't you, when you say that? Bless him. I'm sure you're a Housewives' favourite as well, but, you know...
Possibly not. Compared to Ben, I hardly think so.
And my mum, I told you my mum was saying high praise about you the other day. I was thinking, oh, can you imagine if Ben Habib was my stepdad? But she's got a partner, so you're safe.
Okay.
You're all absolutely
I thought we were
fine.
going to exchange numbers later.
No. My mum and her partner will be watching this, I am sure. Anyway, you know the drill, don't you? It's not just about us three, it's about you at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? Get in touch, gbviews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet me at gbnews. My first email tonight is from Amy. She says, Michelle, I think you're fab and I like your show, but your dress reminds me of my Auntie Jennifer's wallpaper from the early 90s. What can I say, Jennifer? Amy, your Auntie Jennifer was ahead of her time. She clearly had very good taste. Anyway, I've got lots coming your way tonight. Illegal working in just a second. I want to ask you about the NHS. More money, really? Is that the answer? Is privatisation inevitable now? And if so, would that be as bad as we are perhaps led to believe? I also want to talk to you as well about stupid kids taking paracetamol overdoses deliberately for social media kudos. A police chief now is saying that parents have got to get a grip of their kids, but I fear that that ship might have sailed. What do you make to it? Anyway, we've got it all to come, but top story tonight, GB News exclusive. We've now discovered that there's been a huge increase in illegal migrants working in the delivery sector. Long story short, what happens, it seems, is that people, legitimate riders and workers, they're going out, they're joining these companies, they have the right to work and all the rest of it, but they are then allowing other people to use their accounts, basically, for a fraction of the cost, taking a percentage off them, and then these guys are working illegally and obviously earning way below the minimum wage. Lots of conversation about this, right, Ben Habib? But first and foremost, do you think it's ever realistic to entirely stop illegal working in this country?
Well, I think for those people who are outside the entitlement to work legally, of course, the only option is to work illegally, isn't it? And this is a great example of how illegal migration, or people who've arrived in the country illegally, so as not to offend anyone else on the other side of the debate, you know, how they're forced and enticed and forced into taking these sort of black market jobs. The thing for me here is not so much the loss to the exchequer necessarily of tax money that the exchequer may otherwise have got. Actually, in your example, I don't think the exchequer would have lost anything because tax would have been paid by the person who was subcontracting their right to work. But
also, if you're really hardly ever working at all, I think you've got about 12,750 or something before you even pay a penny of tax anyway. So I wonder how much some of these people are earning and therefore how much tax we are losing anyway.
Well, why? Because they sub the 12,000.
No, I'm talking about if some people are on way below the minimum wage, for example, or even if they were just on minimum wage but not working that many hours, then they're going to be lower
than the threshold. I mean, they're outside the tax net anyway. But it's not the tax man that worries me so much. It's what's happening to the competitiveness of British industry, and I use industry in the broader sense. Obviously, this is a service business.
What do you mean? In what way?
Well, because I mean, the reason employers are able to do this, wish to do it, is because employing British citizens is expensive. And it's expensive because we have restrictive employment laws and we have very high taxes on the worker. So, you know, we've got this crazy situation where there are 1.4 million job vacancies, but we've got 5.9 million people taking some universal credit, taking universal credit, and 2.4 million people not even attempting to get a job. That's twice as much as it was before lockdown. And there's a broken labour market at the moment, and that, for me, is more worrying. The other takeaway from this, just quickly before I finish, is to say that, you know, these people are obviously without the same level of they do get benefits. Even people who've entered the country illegally get benefits, but they get much fewer benefits than British citizens do. And you see how they're motivated to work. And it's interesting, isn't it, that if you effectively lower the burden of regulation, lower taxation, take away the safety net, it pushes people into work, which is what's happened with these people. We don't like it. It's undercutting British workers, but it's a really good microcosm example of why deregulation, lower taxes and less benefits is better for the UK economy.
Scarlett?
Well, I don't agree with that at all. I mean, I think the first thing is that what you're talking about is it's an interesting new way of illegal working, that you have people who are perfectly legal,
basically subcontracting.
So actually these people who then do nothing make money out of exploiting people who are illegal. I mean, obviously the tax man is not affected because these people take a lot of money and then give some of it to the people who are actually doing the work. So what it is it's about, and this is what's always happening with illegal working, is it's exploiting people who either work incredibly long hours and or for incredibly low pay. I mean,
so what's the answer then?
There's never been an answer. I mean, the problem is, I mean, there's nothing new. This is a new scam, but there's nothing new about illegal working. I mean, it goes back probably to, I mean, certainly to the last century, right? I mean, so there's nothing new about people coming in, not being legal and working. So the only thing that one can do, which is actually what the government has been doing for decades, is you impose as many restrictions as possible.
Well, I think that's the opposite, Scarlett, of what's needed, because the more restrictions you put in place, the more employment restrictions there are, the more loopholes and regulations there are to exploit. And that's why people move away from the regulated market, because it's far too regulated and far too highly taxed, to the black market.
The people who are on the black market are illegal immigrants, right? They're people who cannot work legally. This isn't about over-regulation. This is about people where this is the only way they can work.
Do you think they should be able to work legally, those people?
I think it depends where we're going.
So the people crossing the Channel now, languishing in four-star hotels and all the rest of it, not able to work, do you think they should be able to work?
I tell you what I think should be happening is what used to happen about 20 years ago, is that they should be processed within weeks.
That's not going to happen. That ship sailed long gone.
No, that ship hasn't sailed because
it has. You've got nearly 200,000 people sat on the backlog.
But so it is ridiculous. It is ridiculous what's happening at the moment, that we have people stuffed into hotels hotels, they want to put them on barges, they want to put them here, instead of actually spending that money on processing, and you send the people home, or you say, yes, you're refugees and you can stay. And it's that simple. And it is the only way. This way of sort of saying, oh, we're going to put them on barges is just another way of spending money. I mean, we have to
But do they not need
the
to be controlled and monitored until we understand who they are, what their beliefs are?
What I'm saying is it should be done properly. And at the moment, people are in, as you say, are in hotels, very unhappily for the people who would like to be in the hotels, for the people who live near and the people in the hotels, because we've got an immigration system that does not work. And instead of actually putting the money into making it work, into having immigration officers who process the claims and then send people home who shouldn't be here, we mess about with everything else. Whether people should work or not, I mean, if you did it quickly, then there wouldn't be an issue.
See, I think Rishi Sunak is missing a trick, right? And if any of Rishi Sunak's advisors, or maybe Rishi himself, is watching Dewbs & Co, they can have this idea for free on me, right? What I would do if I was Rishi Sunak is you've got all these people, you've got a massively economically inactive workforce, labour force, you've got loads of people that are not working for whatever reasons, you've got loads of people now that have left the world of work, I don't know, for whatever reason, they might have enough money, they don't want to work, whatever. I would say, like, you remember like the Kitchener advert, your country needs you. Look at his face, everyone, right? And I'm coming out with a really good idea. If you could see the way that Ben Habib was looking at me as if to say, what is she talking about?
No,
right?
I'm concentrating, I'm taking it all on board.
What I'm talking about is the answer, right? It's going to help. It's going to help the scenario that we're in. So you do like a "Your country needs you" advert, and what you do is say, right, we need to create this new, not like an administration army. So come back into the world of work. We're going to do a training course. We're going to have this massive crack team of people that can process these asylum claims. So you get your labour market working, you get your asylum backlog rapidly processed, and then off you go.
I think that's what I was saying. I completely agree. You told me this ship had sailed.
But
actually, that is what we need to do. That's what we need to do. That's the only way we can do it.
I think viewers that watch my programme, I think that they would return back into the... Maybe people have retired, maybe people don't want to work or don't need to work, whatever. I think there's people in this country that believe that immigration, or not immigration, but the channel crossings, are so out of control now, they would apply their skills, their time and efforts into helping process this delay. Am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know. Why has no one come up with this idea? 'Cause it's not rocket science, is it?
Well, I do agree that once people are here and they've made an asylum application, that should be dealt with as speedily as possible.
Yeah, but it's not being. That's my point.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
It takes literally years at the moment.
Yeah,
right.
It used not to. It used to be a hell of a lot faster.
It used to be 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
So then what changed? What changed?
Well, we've got incompetent government, haven't we? We've got a Home
the
Office
other thing is
that
we
is not fit
sacked
for
a lot
purpose.
of civil servants to
Well, we
save
haven't.
money.
We've got 100,000 civil servants added to the
They
payroll.
do an awful lot of other things. No,
There was 493,000
in
employed.
2010.
Yeah.
In 2010, we had austerity, and we got rid of a lot. We got rid of a lot of civil servants.
That's not right, Scarlett. 493,000 employed in the civil service in 2010. 590,000 now employed. The Tories have expanded it, but of course, with expansion doesn't necessarily come efficiency.
But they also didn't. What they didn't do was they didn't expand the asylum claim. I mean, that's what we're talking about. A tiny bit of the civil service, right, that needs to be properly done. Is that what we need is more people who know what they're doing, and they have to be trained. Right.
Well, there you go. Let's do like a rallying call, the Asylum Admin Army. That is an idea we've come up with on Dewbs & Co. Would you be up for it? Paid, of course. We wouldn't expect you to volunteer your time for free. Maybe that would fix it. Why, though, do you think these things are taking so long in the first place? Now, listen to this. Apparently, I say the word apparently, I've never been polled for anything in all my life, but another poll today is saying that apparently half of us there or thereabouts thinks we need another Brexit referendum in the next decade. Are you one of those people? If so, tell me your thought process, because to me it seems bonkers.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel. Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me, Scarlett Maguire, a former Labour advisor, and Ben Habib, the CEO of First Property Group and a member of the Reform UK Party. We've just been talking about illegal working. Jeff says, simple, make it a criminal offence, then you issue a fine if a company hires an illegal worker. Well, it is already an offence, and actually they're saying that they're going to increase the fines. Next year they're going to do a consultation about it, but get this, you used to be fined it's 15. It was £15,000 you're fined for employing an illegal worker. They're now proposing putting it up to £45,000 if you're a landlord renting it out to someone that shouldn't be here. You used to get a £5,000 fine. They're now pushing that, or proposing to push it up to about 80. So, I mean, you know, they are really, increasing these fines, ridiculous amount. Ian in Hampshire likes my idea of the asylum admin army, the AAAs. He'd be up for it. Good. Let's see if we can get some momentum. Let's leave it to us. No man, Rishi and co, Dewbs and co. We'll sort it all out, won't we? Anyway, let's talk Brexit. Do you think we should have another Brexit referendum? I mean, honestly, I always say this as well, has gone mad, but a new poll has found that almost half of voters, including, by the way, 1 in 5 leavers apparently, say that there should be another Brexit referendum within the next decade. I'm going to lean to you first, Ben Habib. What do you think?
Well, they've got to deliver Brexit before they can actually have another referendum. We still haven't got the entire United Kingdom out of the European Union. Northern Ireland has been left behind subject to EU laws adjudicated by an EU court. The United Kingdom as a whole is hitched at the hip from a regulatory perspective to the EU in state aid, competition, environment, including an international treaty commitment now to delivering net zero, competition, did I say that, employment, state aid. And we are also committed to the European Convention of Human Rights through the Brexit deal that Rishi Sunak, that Boris Johnson and David Frost signed. So
well, we could leave that though, can't we? We don't have to have another Brexit referendum. You can leave the ECHR.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is we've got to leave the EU before they can justify having another referendum. Having said that, if they were to have a referendum, we would be voting to join an incredibly different EU to the one we left.
How so?
Because this EU used to only have the right, for example, the EU is at its heart a wealth redistribution programme, and the mechanism by which that was done was member states contributing money and then Brussels then divvying it out. Now the EU, contrary actually to the initial treaties of the EU, borrows money on top of the money that it gets from its member states. So it is a very highly indebted institution. You've got very highly indebted countries. They were highly indebted before lockdown, even more highly indebted now. And the other thing that we would have to do if we joined the EU now would be to adopt the euro. And we know from masses of examples...
Why do you say that that's a cert?
That is a requirement. That is a requirement of EU accession now. That is a stated requirement.
A cast iron
you're not allowed to keep your currency. So we would have to effectively give up the pound, and we know through oodles of examples that the euro doesn't work. It acts as a noose around your economic neck when things don't work out.
What do you make to this, Scarlett?
Well, unlike you two, I'm a Remainer. I think that I have yet to be convinced that there's anything good about Brexit. However, I think another referendum in the next 10 years would be a disaster. And it's not going to happen. It is absolutely not going to happen that we're going to go through what we went through again, the polarisation of the country. I think it would be absolutely terrible. So, from the other side, I agree with Ben that actually we have to negotiate properly, and we have to negotiate a proper deal with the EU that is going to work, because at the moment nothing works and all we've got is a lot of anger.
I mean, actually what we've done is leave the EU and keep all the EU structures that govern us in place. That's what we've done. We've adopted the worst possible outcome of leaving the EU.
Right, but why? Why? So you're telling me that Sunak sits there and goes, do you know what? I know what I'm going to do to help bolster my popularity and get re-elected. I'm going to make a complete dog's dinner of Brexit and keep us half in and mess up Northern Ireland and...
Michelle, it's the same reason why the Home Service doesn't work, why we can't process asylum claims. It's the same reason why the NHS doesn't work and waiting lists have doubled. It's the same reason why we can't control the flow.
What's the reason?
Well, it's complete, utter governance incompetence. We have a bunch of people running the country who haven't got a clue how to do it. We've got a civil service that seems in opposition to the political mandate that was given to successive governments, including obviously the Brexit mandate, the biggest democratic mandate given to any government, and then parliamentarians and the civil service behind them stood up and basically frustrated it. We do not have proper governance in this country at the moment. We need root and branch reform, and which is why I'm part of...
Literally. See the little sales pitch there, everyone? Did you notice it? Why are you groaning when he's talking?
Because the whole problem is that what we were told was the oven-ready Brexit deal was far from oven-ready and far from deal. There will always be a problem with Northern Ireland and Brexit, right?
There needn't be.
There has to be.
There needs not be a problem with Northern Ireland.
Well, we have to have a border somewhere, right? And
there's already a border.
There is an agreement that there won't be a border, a land border.
Where's that agreement?
In the Good Friday
No, it's
agreement.
not. The Good Friday Agreement recognises and accepts the existence of Northern Ireland and the border.
But it's not a border.
It's a border.
It was done when Northern Ireland was in the EU. The other problem is, look, I mean, it's really, really difficult to divorce your nearest trading partner, and that's what we found. Is that so? Originally, we were supposed to have all these trading posts. None of them are being used. I mean, the problem is that Brexit... I mean, you know, we all know that Boris Johnson, the day after he won the Brexit referendum, swore and said, what on earth have we done? We've got no plan. And that was the whole problem, was that for him, Brexit was a game and it hadn't been thought through. And
I completely endorse and agree that.
Wow.
He was the morning after the referendum, he was virtually dumbfounded, downhearted, visibly shaken when he made his victory speech. He should have been punching the air, he should have been over the moon. At that point, I remember thinking, this man's not behind the agenda.
But that is because, if you ask my humble opinion, there is this massive disconnect between those people that operate in terms of politically running this country and your everyman on the street. And I think that kind of disconnect was so vast that they didn't, for a million years, I don't think they envisaged the turnout. I don't think that they envisaged that loads of people that are not massively politically engaged would have turned out on this one issue. And I certainly don't think that they would have envisaged that people would have actually have gone for Brexit. And I still don't actually think that there's much more of a connection between the political
no, not at all.
And us guys.
But actually, what we need to know is what people were really voting for.
Brexit.
Leaving the EU.
But
we haven't left.
What does that mean?
Well, you tell me there. She's asking you, did you vote for Brexit? What was it you voted for? I voted for Brexit, and I would say ultimate sovereignty for this country to be the ultimate. The buck stops with you, and you are responsible exclusively for what you succeed at and what you fail at. That's what I voted for. What did you vote for when you voted for Brexit? Good weather. That would have been nice, wouldn't it? Let's look, see what the weather's doing.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, most areas enjoyed a dry day on Tuesday, and it's more of the same as we head into Wednesday. Dry and fine for many. Yes, there will be some isolated showers around, but most places will be dry and in that sunshine, feeling quite warm. We look at the pressure pattern then, you can see it's all thanks to this area of high pressure that continue to build in across the country. That's what's settling things down, and that's what's going to lead to a dry night tonight for the vast majority. Clear skies across England and Wales, Northern Ireland, but a bit more cloud across parts of Scotland with a few showers continuing at least through the start of the night. But under those clear skies, we could see one or two mist and fog patches, and also turn quite chilly as well in some rural spots, temperatures falling into single figures in more prone spots. But in towns and cities, temperatures holding up 10 to 13 degrees Celsius. So under those clear skies, we get off to a fine start for much of the country, some early sunshine, any mist and fog patches lifting quite readily. Again, we hang on to a bit more cloud across parts of Scotland with a few showers here continuing throughout the day. Elsewhere, we could see one or two isolated showers, but again, you'll be fairly unlucky to catch one. Most places will be dry with sunny spells as we head into the afternoon. In that sunshine, feeling warm, temperatures ranging from 14 across the far north, but widely into the low to mid-20s, 26 degrees there towards the southeast, feeling warm in those light winds. More of the same as we head into Thursday. Most places will be dry, a bit more cloud towards the east coast at first, that burning back to the coast. Elsewhere, increasing amounts of sunshine, feeling very warm as well, particularly towards the west, just isolated showers once again. It turns warmer still as we head into Friday. Temperatures could reach the high 20s, but with that increasing chance of heavy showers and thunderstorms.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Oh, weather reaching the high 20s. Talk about global boiling. I don't know. What do you make to that? Raymond says, we've not had a proper Brexit at all. John says, no new referendum. I mean, I have to say, I'm not finding much support there for another referendum. Is there anyone out there that says, yes, you think it's a good idea? Mike says, Brexit was the best thing this country has done in the last 50 years. Thank goodness we have left. And Colin says, people that think that we should rejoin the EU need to consider what would that look like. He says it would be a disaster. I'll tell you what some might call a disaster, and that is the NHS. It's in a mess, isn't it? What are we going to do about it? More money being pumped in today, but some people saying, you know what, the government approved, they could not, they cannot, they will not be able to effectively run this health service. Is it time for the private sector to take over? You tell me.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
the Dewbs & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock. Scarlett Maguire, a former Labour advisor alongside me, as is Ben Habib, the CEO of the First Property Group and a member of the Reform Party. Let's talk NHS, shall we? Because the government has revealed plans to pump 250 million quid into the NHS, of course, to try and manage these waiting lists. Labour, though, have accused the government of offering the NHS a sticking plaster. Don't forget, we've got about 7.6 million people on the waiting list in England. The NHS, whatever way you look at it, and yes, we can all sit there and say there's individual doctors and nurses and they're all working and they're all great and that's brilliant, but as an institution, as an effective deliverer of a service, it's failed, hasn't it?
It's really bad at the moment. But when you talk about privatisation, you think, the water companies, they were great. I mean, come on. What we need is proper... The real problem with the NHS is staff. There's no question about that. First of all, we don't train enough and then we don't retain enough. And if we had proper staffing for the NHS, then actually it would completely change.
But do we still have caps at medical school places in this country?
Yes.
Why? See, that's something.
Well, why
that
don't you ask the government? I mean,
because they're not here. I'm asking you.
You're asking me when actually what Labour says is we would have more medical schools and train more doctors.
But they would still put a cap on there.
Well, you only put a cap because there's a limit to how many people you can train at a time, right? I mean, you can't go and train 100,000 doctors. You've got to train them properly. So, for instance, in Sunderland, they're talking about a medical school, and they've got the Vice-Chancellor of Sunderland University to sign up to it, to look at it properly, to talk to Sunderland Hospital about how it works. Training a doctor, I mean, you know, when you go to a doctor, you want somebody who knows what they're doing.
Ideally.
Absolutely. So that's what you have to have. You want trained nurses. You want lots more stuff, and instead, what you're having is gaps all the time. I mean, you can't judge the NHS when it's so badly understaffed, and the morale is so bad. It's all about staffing, actually.
So no to privatisation, yes to state control, but perhaps just not this government. You think the Labour government instead?
Oh, I think what Wes Streeting, who would be the next Health Secretary if Labour wins the election, I mean, what he is absolutely dedicated to turning the NHS around. Remember,
so why aren't they smashing out the park in Wales then?
Because they don't have enough money to hire people.
Oh, that old chestnut.
Well, there is a real problem, right, about having enough. I mean, so. This government...
They can choose to spend more on their health. This is what I don't understand about Labour. If Labour are the answer to fixing the NHS, and if we vote Keir Starmer and we're going to have this wonderful service, there is no better opportunity than right now, in the here and now, for Labour, who essentially overlook, oversee and fund the Welsh NHS, for them to use that as their proof of concept and demonstrate, look at what we can do. And they are not doing that. Some would argue that in some cases the Welsh NHS is even worse.
The problem with devolution is that you have the Welsh Government doing it.
So you have the Welsh Government. I was going to endorse you against Scotland.
Why is it always someone else's fault, though? Because it's Labour ran. And what I'm saying is Labour are not making a great job at it.
No, but what I'm saying is that instead of actually trying to deal with it, what the Tories do is they go, oh,
no, I'm not talking about the Tories. I'm asking you, if Labour are so good and they're going to fix this service so we can all rely on it, why are they not demonstrating that, leading from the front and showing us what they're capable of in Wales?
Because the problem with devolution. The problem with devolution is that it's problematic about...
But health has been devolved, and they can also raise their taxes and they can raise their spending if that's what they want to do.
And they've got control of their local NHS.
You spend more per person in Wales on health spend than you do in England, if my memory serves me right, which I think it does.
No, I don't think it does, actually. But
Someone can fact-check that.
Yes, I think what's important is, I mean, actually, the thing about Wales is that if you talk to patients, they're much happier. So actually, there is a decent service in Wales.
Ben Habib's not looking convinced.
Well, I mean, I think there are two things going on with the NHS. I think the first thing is a structural problem, which is that when it was set up, the average life expectancy was 68. It's now 81. The population of the United Kingdom was around 50 million. It's now 68 million, give or take. You know, number of people we can't really count because we don't know whether they're here or not, the illegal migrants. But the population is up.
You aren't allowed to use it, by the way.
The population is up. The life expectancy is up. So in a sense, it's become a victim of its own success. Also, treatment has become a lot more expensive since 1948. We now have very complex treatments for very serious ailments, which can cost hundreds of thousands of pounds on occasion, which obviously we didn't have when the NHS was set up. So in a sense, it's a victim of its own success and the advancement of medicine. And it becomes ever more difficult for an NHS to provide free medication at the point of delivery. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that we utterly broke the NHS in the pursuit apparently to protect it and locking down the country. We became just the COVID sort of service, didn't we?
Yeah, and primarily a national COVID service.
Yeah, that's. I knew you had a brilliant expression for it.
Not always, yes, I know, because people get in touch and say, shut up, Michelle, people without COVID was treated. Yes,
sure.
I know that they were, but it was predominantly a national COVID service.
But cancer went undiagnosed.
Because they were worried about people dying of COVID. I mean, people weren't in there just because they've got COVID. People were in there like Boris Johnson, where they thought he was going to die.
Yeah, but...
Right,
so,
and that's it. That's what we have to remember, was that we had a pandemic.
Yeah, but you also had these Nightingale hospitals that you'd apparently locked up in no time to deal exclusively with COVID, and you barely even touched them.
Because there weren't enough, there weren't any nurses. That's the whole problem.
Well, the Nightingale hospitals were completely ill-conceived because they all had spirometers, and spirometers turned out to be the wrong treatment.
Completely ridiculous.
For COVID. But
there weren't any nurses and
the point is, you know, cardiovascular disease went untreated, cancer treatment went cancer diagnosis went by the wayside. So we've emerged with the National Health Service broken, contrary to what we said would happen. So we've got two major problems, and with the competence of this government, the chances of fixing it are zero.
Well, do you have the solution? Maybe you can fix it. Ben says the government have no chance of fixing it. Have you got any better ideas at home? Get in touch and tell me. Something coming up after the break. This world, I am telling you, I say it every day, this world is going mad. Kids, teenagers, taking as many paracetamols as they can to see who can be hospitalised for the longest, you absolute pillocks. Who's to blame for this?
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. Till 7 o'clock, Scarlett Maguire, a former Labour advisor alongside me, as is Ben Habib, the CEO of First Property Group and a member of the Reform UK Party. Now, parents, honestly, sit down everyone, because you won't believe how ridiculous this next one is. The parents have been issued with the warnings after teenagers have taken paracetamols to see who could stay in hospital the longest. So who can take the most paracetamols, who can have the longest hospital stay. It's been claimed that this is part of a new TikTok challenge. I've got to say, every day I just think that people cannot become a little bit more thick. And every single day I am surprised, because indeed they do. And now the new police chairman, Donna Jones, she is called on parents to get a grip, her words, and stop these children joining these so-called crazes. I'm asking, and I think the answer is yes. But anyway, your answer is equally as important as mine. So do you think that parents have lost grip on their children? I do.
I think they always have. I mean, I think teenagers have rebelled against parents Certainly for the last 70 years. I'm not quite sure what happened before, but this, I think it is really, really dangerous, this, and actually I think something should be done with TikTok. But I remember, literally decades ago in the 90s that this was happening. It wasn't on social media, it was in the schools, and what was
happening? People out doing each other with paracetamol overdoses?
Yeah,
really?
And going to hospital, and it happened to a friend of mine's daughter, and it was only when one of the girls died that they realised how dangerous it was. There is nothing new with children doing mad things and their parents not knowing about it until afterwards.
Ben Habib, what do you think?
Well, from what I hear of Donna Jones, she seems to be a breath of fresh air, doesn't she? She said a number of things recently which make, complete sense to me, including parents getting a grip. I think things are worse than they were, Scarlett. I think that there's been a progression of state interference in the family, an encouragement. There has.
State interference?
Absolutely.
What state interference
So,
in the family?
We're encouraged, as we were in the last budget by the Chancellor, where he offered childcare to mothers, parents, for children as young as 9 months old, so that they could get back into the workplace. And increasingly parents, because two parents are working and the state provides a full education from 9 months onwards, apparently, because the state is taking so much care of our children, that important, critical parent-child bond is weaker now than it used to be when I was growing up. Sorry.
many years ago. Ben.
Yeah. No, not that many years ago.
Let's just be absolutely blunt, because basically now a lot of mums work, whereas previously a lot of mums was at home. Do you think society is better for mums?
Well, I think there are drawbacks to. I think there are drawbacks to both parents working, and I think the family unit, which was so important, and I think from which you learn so many values, and which also gives you emotional and mental stability because you've got your family around you, that it has been attacked by the state. And the state is ever invasive. Of course, the state wants everyone out working because they can tax all of us. So there's
This is beginning to be a conspiracy theory.
It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory.
The family has not been attacked by the state, right?
I don't think it's a deliberate attack, Scarlett.
No,
but the net result of the encouragement of parents to work and the provision of services and tax regimes which allows them to do that has militated against the coherent family unit.
No, actually, what is that finally, that when Mrs Thatcher was Prime Minister and Harriet Harman in 1982 became an MP, she said, what about provision for children? And everybody laughed at her and said, that's a private matter. It is no longer a private matter. And the reason it's changed, because so many women wanted to go out to work and found that there was no childcare provision.
Yeah, but one of those reasons, though, I would say, and I am probably one of the first generations that's truly kind of embodies this, is we as women were told, you can have it all. You can have all your career, you can have all your kids, you can do whatever you want, and there will be no impact. And actually, because I was told that multiple times over, you can have your life, you can have your career. We waited until we were quite old before we then started thinking, well, actually, let's have some kids now. Then you realise, guess what, I can't even actually have any kids now. Or you end up going on a date and saying to a guy, do you want a drink? And how many kids do you want with that pint? Because your biological clock's ticking. So I think we were sold a pop.
Well, I don't. I think basically I did have it all, and I.
But was there impacts and consequences? Because yes, you can have anything you want, but there are sacrifices, impacts, and consequences.
I think I would have been a terrible full-time mother, and I think my children were very lucky to be looked after some of the time by people who weren't me, and instead I could have a fulfilling life. But actually, why should it have been me? What about the fathers? It's always about women going out to work, right? And actually, it's two parents.
Yeah, but
it's the responsibility of the family to set up their dynamic in that way.
But whatever the cause is, both parents are typically now working.
Yeah.
And the state is basically taking over the bringing up of our children through the school system. And I think that
we've always had state schools, Ben.
But they're becoming responsible for a much broader array of of education, including, for example, PHSE, which I can never remember what it stands for, but basically the social, social guidance for children, something that schools are obliged to provide, but which is not regulated, and schools don't really understand how it should be delivered. And through that, this transgender ideology and all this other stuff, all this other guff, is being fed to our children outside the family.
Lines
are being crossed away from the family, away from scrutiny.
And what was fed to me in my school was my head teacher, who took religious lessons, said the only thing that was good about that Labour had done was legalise sodomy.
I'll tell you what's just been fed to me is that the time has flown by. We're almost out of time, but I do have to just say, I can't end my show without saying I think you're spot on about some of the overreach in schools where educational institutions somehow think that they are parents these days. I think it's disgraceful. But one of the sad factors in life is that there is a third parent these days, and that is called the smartphone. And so many people, they do just give the parenting responsibility to smartphones. That is dangerous if you ask me. But look, that's all I've got time for. Scarlett, Ben, thank you. Thank you at home too. Have a good night. Naja Faraj up next.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, most areas enjoyed a dry day on Tuesday, and it's more of the same as we head into Wednesday. Dry and fine for many. Yes, there will be some isolated showers around, but most places will be dry and in that sunshine, feeling quite warm. We look at the pressure pattern then, you can see it's all thanks to this area of high pressure that continue to build in across the country. That's what's settling things down, and that's what's going to lead to a dry night tonight for the vast majority. Clear skies across England and Wales, Northern Ireland, but a bit more cloud across parts of Scotland with a few showers continuing at least through the start of the night. But under those clear skies, we could see one or two mist and fog patches, and also turn quite chilly as well in some rural spots, temperatures falling into single figures in more prone spots. But in towns and cities, temperatures holding up 10 to 13 degrees Celsius. So under those clear skies, we get off to a fine start for much of the country, some early sunshine, any mist and fog patches lifting quite readily. Again, we hang on to a bit more cloud across parts of Scotland with a few showers here continuing throughout the day. Elsewhere, we could see one or two isolated showers, but again, you'll be fairly unlucky to catch one. Most places will be dry with sunny spells as we head into the afternoon. In that sunshine, feeling warm, temperatures ranging from 14 across the far north, but widely into the low to mid-20s, 26 degrees there towards the southeast, feeling warm in those light winds. More of the same as we head into Thursday. Most places will be dry, a bit more cloud towards the east coast at first, that burning back to the coast. Elsewhere, increasing amounts of sunshine, feeling very warm as well, particularly towards the west, just isolated showers once again. It turns warmer still as we head into Friday.